podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hello everyone and welcome to Haway The Podcast. It's Gav and you join us for a news podcast. Now today I have a list as long as my arm of things to talk about because Monday was absolutely mental. So as you listen to this on Tuesday morning, you'll be well aware of the amount of stuff that happened yesterday, and we're here to talk all about it and hopefully cram it all into a short space of time, because as we record this, it's very late at night and I don't want to keep these two gentlemen who are with me today awake too long. So first off, we're joined by Bomber, who's looking a bit sunburnt. I don't know if you've been on the golf course much this weekend, mate.
Yeah, yesterday, mate. Yesterday, I said off air. Was out playing golf. It felt like being in Portugal, and I waited far too long to put my sun cream on. So yeah,
silly boy.
A bit like the Roker Lighthouse at the minute.
You look like Jerry the Berry off Phoenix Nights. That's what I'm thinking.
Thanks, mate. Thanks. Good to be here.
There like a gay Satan, as he says. Also with us is Craig Chapman. Hello, mate.
I was going to say good evening, good morning, whatever time of day you're listening. Are you all right?
I am, mate. I'm very good. Roped you in on an epic today. Are you excited for this one? Got loads to talk about.
I think I've got a migraine, just like from the amount of stuff that's going on at the minute. You just can't keep pace. You listen to one podcast, you finish it, and then by the time that's happened, there's a scarf picture, or there's a here we go tweet, or we're breaking news on Sky. We're box office again.
That's it. I know. Well, it all kicked off on when I say Monday morning, it really was Monday morning. It was like 3 a.m. when Fabrizio Romano did the confirmation. Well, we already kind of knew it was happening, but the confirmation that Sunderland had agreed to sign Alderete from Getafe. Omar. I'm going to have to get that right. Omar Alderete from Getafe. And then came the pictures on Sky, which Keith Downey captured of him getting off his private jet at Sunderland North Airport with his agents, and there was also a photo going round of him on the plane with his representatives and stuff prior to that. But Omar Alderete, £10 million. Looks like we finally got that elusive central defender, Bomber. And I've got to say, I'm over the moon. He looks just what we need. Big, strong, imposing, aggressive. I actually saw Valencia fans talking about him like he was a nutcase. That's I think it was whatever nutcase is in Spanish. That's what they said. Because I think when he played for them, his disciplinary record wasn't the best, but it has improved a bit since. He was in the La Liga team of the season last year, alongside the likes of Bellingham and Mbappe and Lewandowski and Lamine Yamal. So he kept some good company in that select team, but looks like we finally got the centre half that I think we've all been craving for a good few weeks now.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that last point that you made is probably the most telling. Getafe, they're not the Atleticos, the Barças, the Real Madrids of the world, which tend to, dominate season in, season out in terms of La Liga accolades and awards and teams of the season, etc. So the fact that he's worked his way into that, actually, that in itself makes me more excited to see him and to have him at the club than any sort of YouTube compilation. As you know, and I've mentioned it a few times when I've been on and talked about signings, I try and stay away from the YouTube compilations because they can lead you into a false sense of security with it. But something like that, being in La Liga team of the season, in a Getafe team, I don't know where Getafe necessarily finished last season, but it certainly wouldn't have been in the top 3 or 4. So for him to have worked his way into that is really, really promising. And obviously another international footballer playing for Paraguay. It seems exactly what we need in terms of his stats. His stature is vital statistics, I guess, in terms of how tall he is and everything else. It fits the bill of what we've been crying out for. We don't mind a bit of nutcase sprinkled among the team, do we? He can be our South American Luca 9, jumping on people's backs and blowing kisses to people. I'll be fine with that.
Yeah. I hope he's a lot better than the last Paraguayan centre half we had, Craig, who didn't really amount to much. Poor old Paulo de Silva. I don't know if you saw the message going around. Some Sunderland fan messaged him on Instagram saying, is he any good? And he was like, yes, very good. So he's got the seal of approval from Paulo da Silva, this lad, but let's hope he does a little bit better for Sunderland than he did.
That's quite the endorsement, though, isn't it? Paulo da Silva with his exclusive feedback on who we're bringing in.
I bought a Paraguay top because of him back in the day.
That was trendy, though, wasn't it? When Riveros came alongside, I think, was it red and white?
Yes, red and white with a blue collar. And
I
remember buying it just because of them. And then, neither of them amounted to anything, but I like the top.
I mean, look, to be fair, I've got to concede my knowledge does not extend much more beyond the YouTube compilation of this lad. And it's the same for a lot of signings this summer. So it is quite intriguing. And to be fair, you don't necessarily form the opinion until you've seen them play maybe 10 games for us. I know, look, particularly, I'm going to sound like an old man here, but in our group chat, as soon as somebody's linked, you're seeing all of these spreadsheets coming out and these data graphs and people telling you he's mint based on X, Y, and Z. And I just can't subscribe to that sort of like LinkedIn bollocks. What I want to see is I want to see him when he plays for Sunderland. I want to see how he's going to cope in a team that's obviously going to be under the cosh somewhat. We're going to be penned in, and obviously he's rated very, very highly, as obviously his stats do obviously back that up in terms of being in La Liga Team of the Year. So it'll be interesting to see how he's going to come in and obviously complement. You would assume Dan Ballard playing alongside, but at this moment it's very much a mystery, isn't it?
Yes, it is, and it looks like it's all but done. I would imagine if he's had his medical on Monday, there'll be some sort of announcement maybe later on Tuesday with his media and all the rest of it. I did read that he's only played once in pre-season, and it was chalked down to him having a mystery injury, which I think a lot of people suspected was just the club pushing him to one side so he could sort out a move somewhere else. And, when you see some of the figures we were being quoted for other centre-halves, particularly Lusumi and I think it was Diakite who looks like he's signing for Bournemouth and a few other names that we've seen bandied around. 10 million for a lad who's just had probably a career best season for himself it doesn't sound too bad. But you're right, Craig. I'm only really bothered about what he does for Sunderland. So I like the fact that because just reading up on what people are saying about him being aggressive and a defender first and foremost. Well, that ticks every box for me. I'm not, you talk about being an old man. I'm not a massive fan of like everybody having centre halves who just play out from the back. I want to see centre halves like Dan Ballard who would die to win a header. Like that's what I like to see. So if we're signing another Dan Ballard but with a left foot, that's all right by me. And we'll see what comes out once he does officially sign. If he's passed his medical, which I presume he probably has. We'll see what comes out from that. But great to have a centre half in. Doubt he's going to be ready for the weekend, given he's barely played in pre-season. He's not actually officially a Sunderland player yet, so you're talking what he's going to probably have his first training session maybe on Tuesday, Wednesday. He could be ready for the weekend, but sounds like from what Regis Labrise was saying, it's going to be Sealton Ballard at the weekend. But regardless, just glad to have that player through the door. Anyways, we'll move on to the next story since there's so much to go through. And is this a story? I don't know. It's kind of took over Sunderland Twitter and WhatsApp and everything and ready to go. And everybody's talking about this mysterious striker we're apparently in for. Now, off the top, haven't got a clue who it is, right? So anybody listening who thinks I know, apparently somebody on Ready to Go reckons I said it was Jamie Vardy. That's wrong, by the way. So I've had 3 people send us that screenshot, so I thought I have to address it. Somebody must be talking about me saying that I think Jamie Vardy's coming in. I mean, I wouldn't mind Jamie Vardy, he's all right, isn't he? But no. I do not know who this elusive striker is. I'm told it's not Dobvik, though. Apparently it's not Dobvik, the Roma striker who's been linked. But God knows what. I mean, I did hear on the weekend that we were looking at an experienced striker. Now, whether that's who we get, I haven't got a clue. Nobody's got a clue. But that's the fun of it. It's kind of took over all of social media and it's became like who shot Phil Mitchell. Because everyone's trying to work out everyone's trying to work out who this fella is, and nobody seems to know. And I'm just praying it's not a really underwhelming signing because I think everyone's really built themselves up. I think we're at the stage where people are prepared to say like it's fucking somebody world class or something like that because it's had all this hype. What's your gut feeling, Craig? What you feeling? You're a man who's got his he's out of the ground when it comes to social media. What's your feeling on what's going on? Do you think we're actually in for anyone, or is it just a ruse?
I don't know. I mean, something apparently was mentioned again. This is just all hearsay for me. I haven't actually caught it direct, but apparently Simon Pride, I think, mentioned something on Total Sport. Again, I've read something that Phil Smith apparently has said something at the event that him and Nick Barnes co-host. But true to form, with obviously Sunderland social media, it just spirals, doesn't it? Like literally, just the smallest thing. And I mean, Christ, we have so many like investigative people. You think when Jack was coming over and we had 5,500 people or something watching that flight radar, like we are very, very terminally online as a fan base. I don't know, to be honest. I haven't got a clue. I'm a little bit surprised, to be honest. I thought that this Chelsea lad coming in might have been the end of it. We might have went with a 3. However, obviously you look at maybe Wilson Isidore. He's had a very stop-start pre-season, hasn't he? And he's not perhaps going to be up to speed for a little while. So maybe the club have just thought, you know what, sod it, let's just go for an extra body up there. But what's interesting is obviously you've read, and you've mentioned experience. I think the club measure that a little bit differently to perhaps what a lot of people think. Your instant thought might be, say, Welbeck or obviously Vardy, but we would perhaps maybe consider, say, someone like Dan Neil experienced, and he's only 23, but he's represented our club, well over 150, 200 times. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was somebody at, maybe the earlier part of the 20s opposed to somebody in the 30s. But again, just a case of wait and see, waiting for that Romano tweet to come out, aren't you?
Yeah, and by the time this goes out, Bomber, people might actually know. You never know where Romano could be 4 in the morning. You'll decide to tell everyone who it is, but I think the fact that, look, I mean, Craig said there about, maybe how the club have analysed this and thought maybe we do need another striker. I think it's probably a bit more calculated than that. I think when you look at the strikers we've got, Mayenda, Isidore, Gue and Abdullahi, there's no experience there. I think the club, you look around the rest of the pitch, Granit Xhaka, this centre-half coming in who's like an international, played hundreds of games at the top level. Masuaku even coming in, Ronaldo. We are trying to at least put 1 or 2 bodies in each position who've got a bit of experience, and I think that crucially that's what's missing. I mean, whoever we bring in has got to be different to what we've already got, and straight away you're thinking an experienced head.
Yeah. So everything I'm about to say is on the caveat that we are actually going to bring somebody in, and this is all true. And it is a striker and it is experience. I completely take Craig's point and I follow that because, you would say Simon Adingra is an experienced Premier League winger with 60, 70 Premier League appearances under his belt. But if there was speculation that we were signing a seasoned Premier League winger, Simon Adingra probably wouldn't be top of the list, or certainly not the forefront of everybody's mind. I mean, just looking at our group chat, we're talking Danny Welbeck, we're talking Lois Openda, we're talking Jamie Vardy, we're talking Ahmad coming back because everyone in the group chat's following a flight from Manchester to Newcastle Airport. I think Hoyland was another one that people have been talking about. It's something that we do need. It's quite clear. I think if Mayenda had got off to a flyer during pre-season and he had 3 or 4 goals behind us and everybody, including the coaching staff and the team, had some sort of confidence that for the start of the season at least, he's going to be firing on all cylinders and ready to go and ready to kind of kickstart our season. What this smacks of to me is something that's come out of left field. So we've been aware of an opportunity, let's say, to bring somebody in, and the powers that be feel that it's too good an opportunity not to take up, and have pounced on it. That's what if it's true, that's what it strikes to me. And I can understand the Vardy links because obviously there was those photos going around with him training with our logo, like our hoardings in the background. But yeah, I mean, if it's true, it's exciting, and it's these sorts of things. The speculation just runs wild. I mean, in my heart, and I'm going to put my heart on my sleeve here, and it's not going to be him, but I really want it to be Ahmad back, and I'm going to put my neck on the line there. And it's probably a 200 to 1 shot, but United need the money to pay for some of their signings. He doesn't really fit into Amarim's system, so there. by the time this goes out, I'll have been proven to be an absolute idiot, but I don't care. I'm just reveling in the moment currently.
I'd love it. I would love Ahmad to come back, but I think it's just one of them things. We're never going to get him back. It's like that girl from school who once fluttered her eyelashes at you, Bomber.
The one that got away, mate. The one that got away.
The one that got away. I just cannot see it being Ahmad. But
no, nor can I, but my heart still says yes.
And he's not really a striker, is he? But, we'll see. We'll see. I do think there's a striker coming in, though, just to reaffirm, though. I do not know who it is. And nobody does until one of the big boys on Twitter lets it go. I do think, though, when you think about the Adingra signing, which was made, that came out of nowhere, really. Like, that one was really... Keith Downey did a video with Sky, didn't he? And said, like, I know there's a player coming in, can't name him yet, but Sunderland are signing somebody else. And then all of a sudden, there were videos of Simon Adingra getting off a plane. It could be a similar situation to that. I mean, for the club to be keeping whoever it is this close to their chest. They're
obviously hoping that somebody doesn't come in and last minute and try and, like I said, it smacks of something that an opportunity has been presented to us. We need to jump on it. We need to keep it quiet in case anybody else gets wind of it and tries to kind of gazump us.
Well, there's been other situations in this transfer window where I think genuinely the club try to keep everything like that, but it often leaks on the player's side, on the club side, I mean, anything, you sign anyone in France, all the papers know about it. L'Equipe on it, Marca on it if it's in Spain. Sometimes the club are pretty helpless. They can't do much about it, But I think like the Bulka deal early in the window, where that one, I think they wanted that not to get out. And then when it got out, it just alerted people that there was availability and everything changed. So I would imagine, if they've got somebody really, really big lined up, that, they're going to want nobody to know about it till it's about to happen. So fingers crossed today, as in the day this goes out, Tuesday, fingers crossed we get something concrete on strikers. I think that would be quite fun. Anyways, let's move along again because we've got loads to go through. As I said, outgoings. Now, there's been rumours about Dan Neil. He's obviously not been, how do I put this? He doesn't look like his first choice at the minute, considering he was captain last season, virtually one of the first names on the team sheet. We've gone out, we've signed 4 central midfield players in the summer. In pre-season, he's basically been part of the second string. We've gone out and signed a world-class midfield player in his position. So it doesn't matter who you are, you're going to struggle to get in ahead of them. And it looks like they're going to give the captaincy to Granit Xhaka too. So everybody's talking about Dan Neil's future. Is he going to stay? Is he going to head off and, take a better offer elsewhere? He's got a year left on his contract. Is he going to sign a new deal? Do the club want to keep him? All these things keep coming up. But it was revealed on Monday evening by Mike McGrath, who I can't remember what outlet he writes for, maybe the Telegraph, could be wrong. But Mike McGrath has said that Dan Neil has opted to turn down approaches from clubs in Spain and the Premier League to stay at Sunderland and fight for his shirt. Great news. That's exactly what I want to hear. I want Dan Neil to stay at Sunderland. I'm a massive Dan Neil fan. I know you are too, Craig. Dan Neil's he's one of our own, as we sing when he gets his chant at the games and stuff. And look, I'm sure he's under no illusions it's going to be really, really tough for him to get this team. But it should be for every player. Every player should be looking at this squad and going, fucking hell, I'm going to have to really work hard to get my place in this team. Dennis Cirkin should be saying the same at left back because we went out and signed 2 quality left backs. Alan Brown, Chris Rigg, all these players should be looking at the boys we've brought in and gone, I've got a right battle on my hands. But I don't want to see Dan Neil leave. I want him to sign a new contract that keeps him at the club for the foreseeable. And I want to see him playing Premier League football because he's earned his chance. He's got promoted twice for Sunderland now and deserves to get that chance. And you never know, Craig, do you? He could actually prove to be really worthwhile to us this season. And I think that's what we all want to see because he's a top professional, top lad. And he is one of our own.
Well, I think that's the most important thing that you've mentioned there, that he is one of our own. And I think that people would probably do well to remember that because there's been an awful lot of speculation, a lot of misinformation as well about his alleged contract demands. I mean, like I say, we're in a group chat with a lot of people And when they're just passing off things as fact, which you just know is just absolute rubbish, I think we really should be doing better. And it does seem to be a trend with a lot of our local players. It goes on, and it's went on for a long, long time. They get hung out to dry. They get held to different standards. And I think, as you've quite rightly said, Dan Neil has basically got 2 promotions with Sunderland. That's cult-like status. And this isn't the first time that he's turned down interest, by the way, because he has interest every single summer, because he is obviously a very good football player. But like you said, again, it'll come as no surprise to him. The club are doing their very best, not just to make the numbers up this season. We need to increase competition in every single area. And as a result of bringing in players like Xhaka, you'd like to think it's gonna, be a bit of an uplift for people like Dan Neil and Chris Rigg, and it's going to get them to step up a little bit more and not necessarily have that assurance that they're going to be in the starting lineup. So they're going to do absolutely everything they can. And it's not even a guarantee that the likes of Xhaka will play every single game. Obviously, look, he's a walking yellow card the best of times. But that being said, they're all going to pick up injuries because of the intensity of these games. We've got a big squad now, so there's a chance that we could even maybe have a little bit of a cup run as well. So there's plenty of chances for everybody. So it's important that we keep Dan Neil tied down. And look, if you're going to sell him, realistically speaking, would we replace him for the supposed money that is sort of being banded around? I think people saying maybe somewhere in the region of 10 million. Can you do better than Dan Neil for that sort of money? I really don't think you can.
Yeah, it's true, Bomber. I think Dan Neil's worth to this club's probably more than money to me. You know, I think everyone's got their price, and look, there's no room for sentimentality and all the rest of it. But I just think, there is a danger when nobody's arguing that we need to recruit players. We've got to, just to have even half a chance of staying up, we've had to have done what we've done. We've had to go out and basically sign a full new team. But the culture that the club has developed over the last 5 years, Dan Neil's been at the centre of that. And that's going to be important as we get into tough people. Now, at the minute, everything's rosy. Everyone's buzzing because we're signing players. When the football starts and we start losing games, you're going to need people like Dan Neil to remind these new players and show these new players what it means to be a Sunderland player, Granit Xhaka might be an amazing leader, but he doesn't have a clue about Sunderland. He's been there 2 minutes. And you're going to need your Luke O'Nine's, Patrick Roberts', Dan Neil's, even Chris Rigg, Chris Rigg's been at Sunderland since he was knee-high to a grasshopper. Yeah. These lads know the club inside out. Pato is another one. So they might not play every week, but they're important characters to have around the football club when we're going through it's going to be a massive, massive change. We've said this repeatedly. For 8 years, all we've done is win, pretty much. Bar one season, really. All we've known is winning. When we start losing games of football, and I'm not saying we're going to lose every game, but we're going to lose a lot more than we used to. That's when you need your big characters to step up and make sure these things don't escalate and make sure that everyone remembers the goal is to stay in the Premier League this season, and this is how you manage it. And I think Dan Neil could be crucial to that.
Yeah, absolutely. He's not the only one. Like you said, the worst thing that the club could do for all the good things that they're doing in terms of signing the likes of Xhaka and Adingra and the whole lot, the 11 signings that we've pulled in so far, all have been fantastic. But the worst thing the club could do would be to completely disregard and rip up the fabric of what made us such a good team to watch, such a good team for the football neutrals to get behind, and all the column inches and the press and the YouTube videos and the social media posts that have been attributed to the club over the last 2 years is because the likes of Dan Neil, Trai Hume, Dennis Serkin, Luke O'Nine, Dan Ballard have all made this club exciting to follow and exciting to watch. So it would be foolish to completely rip that apart. It's really good that Dan Neil's, if he has come out and said, I want to stay and I want to be part of this Premier League season. It must be quite conflicting for Dan Neil, because on one hand, the Sunderland fan, the boyhood local lad, must be absolutely buzzing to see his club signing Granit Xhaka and the likes, and seeing the quality coming in. He's got a front row seat to that. He sees them every day in training. He can see Enzo Lefebvre and how good he is.
And he can learn from these players too.
Yeah,
Bomber.
And that's probably what's helped make his decision. The only thing that it might be implied, but the only thing that those quotes haven't said is that he's signing a new contract. He's saying he wants to stay and he wants to live out his dream of playing for Sunderland in the Premier League. That still doesn't necessarily mean he's going to sign a new contract.
True.
And if that is the case, then that decision might be taken out of his hands. Like we've said, if the club have said, well, we'll lose him for nothing next year, and we've got 10, 12 million offered in for him, they might take that decision out of his hands. But I completely agree with the pair of you in that the 10 or 12 million that we might get for him is a lot less value than even getting one season out of Dan Neil, helping the others bed in, learning from them, and letting him go on a free at the end of the next season. I would much rather see that. And if he's happy to start the season as fourth choice centre midfielder and fight and scrape and learn and grow, and come Christmas time, be keeping Granit Xhaka or Siddiqui or someone like that out of the team.
Come Christmas time, the African Nations Cup will start, and there'll be two midfielders missing. So
exactly.
We're going to need bodies.
Like Craig said, we've got the League Cup, we've got the FA Cup, which teams that we'll have enough on our hands trying to stay up. Let's not be silly. But now that we're in the Premier League and we'll have seen what the likes of Crystal Palace did last season, Cup runs on out of the realms of possibility and out of the realms of reality anymore. So, Dan Neil in FA Cup games through the rounds and in League Cup games through the rounds will be crucial. And that will give him the platform to potentially work his way back in as a starter for the Premier League season. So it's good news. It's good news either way.
Yeah. Well, let's hope that what follows this is a story about him signing a new deal. That's what I think. That's what we all want. Put it to bed, basically, because it's maybe because there's been so much positive transfer news, it hasn't dominated the headlines, but it's been an undercurrent of the entire pre-season. That what's the crack with Daniel? You forget, he's the captain of the team, and we're still sitting here going, is he staying or what? And to be fair to the football club, whatever's going on, and I'm sure they're well aware of it. They're under negotiations with Daniel and whoever represents him and stuff, so they're well aware of what's going on. But to be fair to the club, they've just cracked on. They've signed players because they have to. They can't sit and wait for Dan Neil to sign a contract and decide what he's going to do. But I imagine he's had a lot of soul searching to do over recent weeks and months as he's seeing new players coming in. He probably didn't think when he's standing on the pitch at Wembley celebrating promotion that within a couple of weeks of coming back for pre-season training, or basically a week of coming back for pre-season training, that he might not actually be a guaranteed starter in the team. He was probably just thinking, I'm going to play in the Premier League. And a lot's changed since the end of last season, and maybe he has had to go away and think, is this time for me to go? It's a big year in terms of I need to sign a contract or I need to leave, basically. That's his choice at this stage is, you either sign it. I don't think, I know what you're saying, Bomber, about you would rather have a good year out of Dan Neil and lose him potentially. I don't think the club think like that. They'll sell him.
Oh, no. I agree.
Whether he wants to stay or not, if there's any hint of him not signing a contract, he will go this month.
Yeah.
But that is a really positive story, and it's an indication that he probably is going to sign a new deal, and I think that's what we all want. Okay, next story then. Moving on slightly. Wolfsburg apparently have lodged a £10 million bid for Trai Hume. Now, when I saw that, I laughed out loud. I genuinely just laughed out loud. Thought that is ludicrous to think that you can get Trai Hume for 10 million quid. But that is apparently what Wolfsburg have bid in the last few days. The club rejected it by all accounts and have said he's very important to our plans going forward. Exactly what you'd expect, Craig. We aren't we're a selling club. Every club's a selling club, but we're not the same selling club we used to be, where it was just all right, you can come and take whoever you want of us for whatever you fancy paying for them. I think if you want Trai Hume, you've got to be bidding twice as much as that, genuinely. Because I think Trai Hume, and I've said this before, he won Player of the Season last year. I genuinely think of all the players we brought up with us, he's the most Premier League ready player we've got. He's robust, he's physical on international duty. He's shown he can do it at that level. So he's played against a lot of top teams for Northern Ireland, and he captains his country. I genuinely think, whilst there's no actual substance behind this opinion, that Trai Hume is a Premier League footballer. And if he has a year like I think he's going to have, next summer we'll be getting bids a lot bigger than that for Trai Hume, and I think it's not the most important thing, but it's still important. We know his value, and it's not 10 million quid. And again, like we just said about Dan Neil, Trai Hume's value to this, basically this cause this season, where we need strong leaders, strong characters who've been on the journey with us. I mean, Trai Hume is just as important as what I've just said about Dan Neil, and I think we cannot afford to let him. We couldn't replace him for 10 million quid. No,
I mean, people obviously always say about what German humour's like, and I thought it was a complete nut a piss take, to be honest. I really did. I think it's 10 million pound. I mean, then you see other figures banded about as well. I think Sky said the initial interest was like 7.5 million. Not a chance. Not a chance at all. It's pleasing straight away to hear that the club are already in talks, or perhaps looking to extend his deal and give him something that is more deserving, obviously, of his contributions over the last season. Captain of his country, you could probably give him the armband in Granit Xhaka's absence in the starting 11 as well. One of our best players, probably one of the best signings actually under the current regime for the value of money that brought him in. And if you think he came in as a skinny little boy, and you look at him now, he's fearless. He's got pretty much everything about him, hasn't he? I think people all say, like, listen, he's old fashioned, this, that, and the other, but I think that does him a disservice, because whilst he's as hard as nails, he contributes going forward. Some of his crossing is absolutely outrageous at times. Chips in with goals, yeah, no brainer. It would need to be a ridiculous amount of money before we would even entertain selling them.
Yeah, but that's true, isn't it? He's got everything that we want from a right back. And I mean, you look at the makeup of this defence this season as it stands. Ronaldo, solid, hard work, and at least Ballard in this new centre half, we've just described what they're like. And then Trai Hume, who's just, as Craig says, a proper throwback. That gives you a lot of confidence for I think this season's going to be tough, but if it's not like when we went down under Moyes and we had like Van Aanholt. I know you love him, but who's your? Yeah, we'll not go there again. Bomber loves Van Aanholt, but that's not what you would class as an old school rough and tough fullback. No. What we've got right now is a full roster of defenders who are like that, and Trai Hume just complements this team so much. And as Craig said, I think last season he added so much to his game. All of a sudden, he was whipping the ball in like Nicky Summerby and volleying it in from set pieces, and scored a free kick, didn't he? And all like Trai Hume is I think I don't know what his ceiling is, if I'm honest. I genuinely think he's got a lot of room to grow. I look at like Andy Robertson at Liverpool, and the hit very similar in terms of like Andy Robertson started from playing in the Scottish second tier or whatever, third tier, and managed to win Champions Leagues and Premier Leagues. I wouldn't put it past Trai Hume to have that trajectory. That's how much I rate him.
Well, people will scoff at that. Sorry for interrupting there, Bomber. I mean, you think Andy Robertson came from Hull, so there's no reason why Trai Hume could not do that. Maybe not necessarily say Liverpool, but I could see a future for him where he's playing for a team in European competitions. You could, for argument's sake, say like an Aston Villa come in for him, or a Nottingham Forest, someone towards the top end of the division, and you would not imagine he would look out of place in any of those sides.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned Andy Robertson, because my very next sentence was going to be, Trai Hume potentially on this trajectory could be a £25 million signing for Liverpool next season if we carry on. If we stay up, or even if we go down, all that will do is pretty much change the fee. But any success that we have this season in terms of staying up, Trai Hume is going to be a pivotal part of that. And like you said, people, because of how full-blooded he is in a 50-50, and everyone's still got that Burton Diaz tackle pinging around in their minds. They just see him, like you said, as like a 90s Premier League fullback that will just smash people and smash their wingers and make them not want to be interested in the football match. Trai Hume's a lot more than that. And I mean, there's not many out and out right backs that I can even think of at the minute that can do what he does, or have as many strings to his bow as he has. You tend to look at right backs, particularly in the Premier League now, and they're kind of slightly more defensive right wingers. But he is your stereotypical modern fullback. Yeah, I mean, maybe not a Liverpool, like you said, maybe not a top four club, but a Spurs, an Aston Villa, someone of those, that ilk, I think he could probably do a job for now, let alone in a year's time with some Premier League experience under his belt. Just to tag on to what Craig was saying, the fee is absolutely laughable. I don't know who in Wolfsburg has signed that off and said, yeah, I think we could get him for 10 million. Let's chuck that in. You know, for us, he's that important to us. You'd need to double it for us to even consider it. And even then we'd probably turn it down, and it would need Trai Hume to turn around and go, do you know what? I fancy that. But equally on Trai Hume's point of view, you've got the chance to be a starting right back in the Premier League. Why on earth would you go to for all intents and purposes, a middling Bundesliga club to finish mid-table and get dicked by Dortmund and Leverkusen and Bayern Munich, when, you know, you could stay with us and get dicked by Arsenal, Man City and Chelsea instead. But yeah, it's a non-story. We've spent a good few minutes talking about it, but it's that farcical that it probably doesn't really want us talking about it. But if nothing else, it's given us a chance to wax lyrical and show a bit of appreciation to Trai Hume.
Well, yeah, I think the important part of the story, Craig, was that the fact the club apparently have just shut it down and went, nah, you're all right. We don't want to sell him. He's part of our plans. You know, as I said when we first started talking about this, in an era gone by, we would have probably sold him for 10 million to Wolfsburg and wouldn't have cared. They would have went, all right, yeah, because back in the day, we never had any players of any worth. So if we had one or two that did go, you know, Jordan Pickford being the best example of that. You know, he was the only player of any value we actually had in our books, and we sold him to Everton. So, you know, you can understand why people might get a little bit nervous. Like Sunderland fans might see that news and think, shit, well, Trai Hume's wanted. I'm imagining there's a lot of clubs have registered interest in him this summer. It won't just be Wolfsburg, because I know you said you hate the data stuff, but a lot of clubs love it. And on the data metrics, Trai Hume scores very highly in just about everything from a defensive perspective. So there'll be clubs who've probably never actually watched him in person, who've just purely looked at the data and went, this kid at Sunderland's got something, because he does flag up that well. So you can kind of understand, one, why people are looking at him, and two, why some fans would be nervous. But I'm not nervous. I kind of look at the way the club handle things these days, and the players who've actually left the club. Every single player who's left the club, who's been an important player for us, the club have done very well out of it. We've never had our pants pulled down, because we understand that if we have to sell somebody, it's got to be on our terms.
Yeah, I think we're in a strong position, aren't we? They mentioned 2 years left on his deal, I think, with the option of another. And look, like you say, every big player who's left, Ross Stewart we got good money for. Obviously, his career has never really went anywhere since leaving us. You could argue that in hindsight. I think maybe we all turned our nose up at first about the Jack Clark money, but, you know, again, careers went absolutely nowhere. He's had a year of making Premier League money, but it looks to have been a bad move.
Yeah.
And the Job deal as well. Obviously, I mean, we really forced Dortmund into giving us maximum money. I know that they really did try and, I think, undermine us in the media somewhat and try to get us down on that fee, but we held our nerve. And I would suspect that if that is to happen again with any of our players, that will stand strong. But I think the sooner people make peace sometimes with whatever player that you love will inevitably move on at some point, whether we sell them to a bigger club, whether they leave, whatever. It does happen. But obviously, I think the club have done well in pretty much everyone so far in terms of who they brought in to replace them. So they've got enough credit in the bank. You would trust them if Trai Hume was to leave. Like I say, it would need to be an astronomical sum of money, but you would trust them to replace him.
Yeah, well, that's it. Yeah, you would trust them, but at the same time, it's like what we said before. I'm sure there are players of Trai Hume's ability out there who could do very well for us in the Premier League playing right back, but I just think a lot of it's about culture and character and stuff, and Hume's been on that journey the same as a lot of these lads have, and that's, especially in this first year or two, we're going to have to, the ones who are capable of stepping up have to be kept around regardless of what else goes on. And I'll not move on that, me. Like, I think even, down to Luke O'Nien. Luke O'Nien's a massive part of the culture at the club. he won't play every week in the Premier League, but he'll play and he'll be a part of games and he'll be happy doing it. And it's not just about what you see on the pitch for 90 minutes. It's about the day-to-day and stuff. And if you just replace a full team and like piss off the players who got you there or move them on, it isn't going to have the same feel. You do need, you're always in transition. You're always moving on to something else, particularly if you're a club with a high ceiling like we've got. Our aspiration is to become a football club that finishes in the top 10 of the Premier League and plays in Europe. To do that, we've got to build very slowly. We can't just, look, Kirill knows that. Christian Speakman knows that. That's why these players will be kept around and we'll hang on to them. And that's for the best for the football club, isn't it, ultimately? Speaking of departures, that was my awful segue into this next story. It was announced on Monday that non-executive board member David Jones has decided to move on. He, of course, for anybody listening who didn't know this, David Jones, the Sky Sports presenter who you will have seen every single Monday with Jamie Carragher and Gary Neville for the last God knows how many years, presenting their coverage of games. He's their main presenter. David Jones is also a Sunderland fan. We've had him on this pod in the past. Dave Jones has been a non-executive board member at Sunderland since 2019, around the time when I'm trying to think who will have been. I think was Donald Methan still at the club when he took that position up? There probably would have been, wouldn't there? Yeah. So 6 years been a long time, but he's decided that now that the club's back to the Premier League, that it's time to move on. And I mean, he didn't say it in his statement, but he is going to have to talk about Sunderland for his day job and talk about the teams we're playing. And, you're talking about a conflict of interest potentially there, Craig, aren't we, with Dave Jones? And you can kind of understand why he might have decided to move on now. But it was nice to see him get a good section on the website and some nice parting words from Kirill, who valued his input, given that, when Kirill came to Sunderland, he didn't know much about us. So on an executive level, to have Dave Jones there to guide him while he was learning about Sunderland will have been very valuable. And we know that Dave Jones had held up a similar position at Oxford, hadn't he, years before? So he didn't come into it as a complete rookie, but I just think now the club's moved up several levels in terms of not just that we're standing in the leagues and things. I think just generally we're now operating like a top football club. Maybe his role's lessened now. And of course, as I said, I think the big one is his job will involve having to talk about Sunderland, and he can't show any hint of bias in his coverage of the football club. As a director, it's kind of like, he's probably been backed into a corner a bit there and maybe had some advice to move on. But yeah, good to see him move on good terms, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, good guy. Obviously, has represented Sunderland very well whenever he's talked about us down the years. I would probably wager that this wouldn't necessarily be the end of his involvement. I'm sure that he'll still chance to be, at the end of a phone when people need advice about anything in particular regarding Sunderland. But I suppose if you have to go out because it's an conflict of interest, I should say, then there's no better way than going out than seeing us promoted, is there, especially in the way that we did. So wish him well. Obviously, he's going to be talking about us quite a lot this year. Let's just hope it's obviously all positive.
Yes. And like I said, Bummer, he's done his job, hasn't he? So good. Yeah. But it was at a time when, our status wasn't what it is now. And to have somebody who's of huge repute, all right, yeah, as a broadcaster, not as a football executive, but still somebody who cares very deeply about Sunderland, given it's his team, came along and obviously was of great value, or he wouldn't have lasted 6 years.
Yeah, exactly. He's, like you said, he might not necessarily been known previously as a director or sitting on a board of directors of a football club. But he has a big sphere of influence because a lot of people know him through Sky. So it probably helped bring a little bit of interest to the football club in terms of from the neutrals who know Dave Jones as the person on Sky Sports, and then finding out he's a Sunderland fan, and by the way, he's also on the board of directors. I think hopefully he'll feel like it's job done. I mean, he was quite clearly in to be the conduit between kind of what it means to be a Sunderland fan and what Sunderland fans want, and the ownership. Like you said, Kirill in particular, who was kind of learning English football, learning the EFL, learning Sunderland. So, there's probably some absolutely invaluable nuggets of information that have been imparted there. But like we said, I think it was last week when we were talking about, I think me, you and Dom were talking about how the owners now get it. They get what the fans want. They get what it means to be a Sunderland fan. They get how to, to reach out to us and to engage us. And probably that learning was thanks in a lot of parts to Dave Jones's involvement. And there's probably no better way to leave your job, is there, than feeling it's job done, and the day job means that you have to kind of step back. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure it wouldn't have been a decision that he took lightly, especially being a Sunderland fan, to give up that privilege. But sometimes, the day job speaks, doesn't it? So
that's it. There are a couple of other little bits and pieces. You probably saw the furore from former owner Bob Murray about the potential issues around future stadium expansions, and his claims that the council had changed plans to not include a buffer zone, which would have then meant basically they could develop on land, which would then restrict the club's ability to extend. I think the council rebuffed that claim with a statement to the Sunderland Echo. I've got to be honest, being embroiled, away from the pod, been embroiled in this all day, people pinging us emails and messages trying to get us to talk about this, but I don't know enough about it. But it certainly warrants a mention anyways, and I think if people weren't aware of this story, you can find it out there. It's on the Sunderland Echo's website. James Copley ran a story on it today, which includes all the quotes from Sir Bob Murray, and then the statement back from the council from, I believe the name of the guy is, and I've lost it, so I don't know his name, but the fella on the council who has rebuffed these claims. Anyways, it's all on the Echo's website. Apologies, I don't know enough about it, but yeah, apparently that's going on in the background. Also, don't know if you saw the photos running around on social media, but it looks like in the, I think it's at St Mary's, there's a big painted mural going up of Tommy Watson and Dan Ballard, which apparently will be ready for the weekend. So that should be nice. If you're heading into town before the game on Saturday, you'll get to see this giant painted mural of the two lads who scored the important goals to get us to where we got to in the Premier League and stuff. So I'm looking forward to seeing that going up. And tonight, as you listen to this, and I think I misrepresented this the other week on the pod, I think I actually announced this game as happening that night, and it just, maybe I just got my dates wrong or whatever. But the under-21s are genuinely playing tonight against Scunthorpe in the National League Cup at, is it Glanford Park? I've been there a couple of times. I can't remember you're both shrugging. You've probably been, Craig. Have you not been to Scunthorpe before?
Yeah, I've been, but I don't need to worry about teams like that no more, do I? Going to big places this season, man.
That's it. I remember being in like most of these stadiums, actually. I remember being in an industrial state, like a KFC and a McDonald's and a Hungry Horse, bloody, like a chain pub outside and stuff. That's all I remember about that place. Anyways, I saw Robin Reuter play really well there in pre-season. I think that's when I went last.
That's probably why you remember it, because it was one of the few occasions.
He was on trial when he played that game, and I think we followed it up with a game a couple of days later against Bradford, which won him the contract. So yeah,
Scunthorpe is the Assis Arena apparently. So I don't know who's changed names recently, but I just googled it whilst you bought a bit of time.
Yeah, well, I made a joke about it the other week because that was genuinely a league fixture for us at one point. And now they're in non-league, and our under-21s are playing them in a cup. But that is tonight. So if you're in the Scunthorpe area, or you don't mind driving 2.5 hours down the A1 or wherever, the A1M1 to Scunthorpe, taking a game tonight, you can do that. And I would imagine there's going to be maybe a mix of first teamers and young'uns, maybe just fringe players, or even the bomb squad might even play in that. Got no idea. But if you fancy a game of football, that's on tonight. I think that's about it. I think we've done well to fit that all into 50 minutes, to be honest. I was looking at that list of stories thinking, shit, it's going to be an hour and a half, this. No doubt by the time this goes out, something else will have happened. Because as I look at my clock, it's 10 to 10 at night. There's still plenty of time for Fabrizio Romano or Ben Jacobs or Florian Plettenberg or somebody of that ilk or Keith Downey to ruin our podcast by dropping another mad story on us. But as of right now, that is it. So thank you very much, gentlemen. Cheers, Bomber. I was going to call you Luke.
Pleasure as always.
I was going to call you Luke. Nobody calls you Luke.
Nobody calls me that.
No.
That's reserved for my mum and dad. That's it. Not even my sisters call me by my actual name.
I think I've just dropped a bombshell on the listeners. Yeah. Nobody's ever referred
just
to
exposed me.
Yeah, his real name's Luke. Cheers, mate. And cheers, Craig. Thank you very much, mate.
Thank you. We're gonna have the triangulators out now, Bomber. They'll be piecing your accent together with that first name. They'll be coming to find where you live.
Not many Lukes in Gloucestershire, mate. I've just hated myself again.
There we go.
There you go.
So don't piss anybody off because they will genuinely pin you down. But yeah, anyways, thank you very much, guys. Thank you to the listeners. We will be back with the pod every single day as we build up to the West Ham game at the weekend. So make sure you get subscribed if you're not already subscribed to the show. But for us, let's bye for now.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Our public schools are a place where all kids feel like they belong.
My children.
My family. My community.
All students. All students.
All students belong in a great public school.
Let's get ready for back to school at NEA.org/backtoschool.